Hello. In this video, we're going to look at a way to import AP transactions from a flat file using Integration Manager's ODBC, Advanced ODBC feature. The thing that you'll notice is the file that we're using is very simple and has only the absolute information that's going to be changed from one period to another. All the information that's standard and that is, will not change from one period to another will not be on the file, but will be handled via the integration manager. So what information we do see here is the batch ID, we have the vendor ID, we have the document date or transaction date, we have the description, we have the GL accounts that are associated with the individual line item amounts, and we have the distribution reference or description of the distribution amounts. You will not see the document number because in a lot of cases the document number is not something that's coming from the file, it's something that the user has to come up with. So we are going to build a logic based on the batch ID, vendor ID, and the first part of the GL account, which brings us to another issue. We are going to use multiple AP accounts depending on the expense accounts in the transaction. So for example, this line would be a transaction in itself with an AP account whose first segment is going to be 000. These two lines are going to be part of one transaction whose AP account is going to have its first segment as 100, so on and so forth. So let's jump into this and go ahead and save this file as a text file or a CSV file, and go ahead and save this to the location that we need, and we can go ahead and close the window. Next up, we're going to open up our integration manager. We're going to create a new integration. We're going to call it AP Advanced ODBC, and we're going to leave the maximum number of errors and warnings to be at 10. Then we're going to go in and add our first source, which is going to be the header. So we're going to click on Advanced ODBC, and we're going to define a new Advanced ODBC source. We're going to say APH1 as our header, just to make sure that we have a unique name. And we're going to create a new data source. And this same data source can be used for both the header and detail, so we don't have to create a new one. So you're going to call it AP ODBC. You can call it whatever you want. The driver that we're going to use is the Microsoft text driver. Select that and hit finish. Then make sure that we drill down to the location of the file. In my case, it's on the desktop, so I go down there. I see my file ap2.csv. Say OK, and then OK again. Now I have my data source defined. The next thing that I'm going to do is go and define or use SQL statements to come up with my file format for the header and the detail. The header SQL looks like this. You can see that I'm pulling data from ap2.csv. I have my batch ID, vendor ID, document date, and description, which are all coming directly from the file. I'm summing up my distribution amounts based on all of the other criteria on the header to come up with my document amount. And finally, for my document number, I have my first segment, which is the first 3 characters of the account, followed by the batch ID, and then followed by the first 8 characters of the vendor, to make sure that the document number is unique by account and by vendor. Again, we have to group this by all the fields other than the amount field, and we have to make sure that we order this by the document number. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this code and put it into my SQL statement box. And to make sure that the columns appear, I go to the column and it looks good. So I have all my columns. So I'm done with my header. The next thing I'm going to do is add another source. Again, Advanced ODBC. I'm going to create a new one. I'm going to call it AP Detail 1. Now I can use the same source that I used before, which is the AP ODBC. And now let's go back to look at our SQL code for the detail. Now, remember, we did not have the AP account or the line associated with the AP account. And that is this piece right here. You see that I have my document number defined here. This is my document number, which is what is going to be used to combine our header or relate our header to the detail. And then I'm going to have the sum, the negative sum of all the distribution amounts to come up with my credit amount, and the account is going to be based on the first segment of the expense account plus a standard AP account, which is the second and third segment. My AP distribution type is always 2, so I have that, and I do not have any distribution reference. If I look at the expense account part, it's straightforward. I have the document number, which is this piece. I have the distribution amount. Now I don't have to do any summary or anything. It's every line is its own distribution amount. We have the expense account or the distribution account. Now 6 is the distribution type for purchases. And finally, we bring the distribution reference from the file itself. Now we combine all of this and we make sure that we order this by document number. It's absolutely critical that we order both the header and detail by the document number, because otherwise we may miss out on some accounts. So what I'm going to do is, again, copy this, and I'm going to go to my box, SQL box, and paste it there, and just go to the columns, make sure that my columns show up properly. Now once I do this, I have both my headers and detail, and I have to do the relationship, which is all straightforward. Now this is the last piece I'm going to do, and then I'm going to wrap this up, because everything else from this point onwards can be done exactly the same way that we did on the other video, where we used a more simpler file format without using the ODBC functionality. I hope you can combine this video with the other video to come up with a simpler but more advanced way of using Integration Manager. Thank you.